Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Well, how'd you like that weekend without football? I mean, there was a little football because we had the high school games Thursday and Friday, had some preseason games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Jordan Love didn't play. Zach Wilson got sacked for safety, but threw a touchdown pass. What does it all mean? Will Wilson make the Bronco roster? Will they only keep two quarterbacks and it won't be him? What will happen? How about Tim Patrick getting in the end zone? That guy's had so many injuries. It's unbelievable. All right, we'll get to all the football coming up. Right now, though, we're going to start with a little soccer. Kurt Schmid, Chief Soccer Officer for RSL, joining PK and I to talk about a flurry of moves at the summer transfer window deadline. Here's Kurt Schmid from RSL with PK and I. I think a lot of people are wondering, how is RSL with 9 games left in the season? Gomez had 13 goals and 9 assists. He's gone, but there was no depth up front. You've probably got 2 new starters and 3 new pieces for those 4 attacking players. Is the team better today than it was when the transfer window opened?
Yeah, look, everything we do, we want to make the team better. And I think we've got an increased level of depth, an increased level of competition amongst the squad. I think we've added talent to the group, overall. So I think we've raised both our floor and our ceiling, even though it's going to certainly look a little bit different with departures and incomings. But I think we've been able to successfully raise both of those things.
With the time off in games, is it a good time to do this, to maybe have opportunities to mesh everybody together?
Yeah, I mean, look, this gap in games is probably not ideal from a lot of standpoint. It's just a big rhythm killer, but it's helped us, I think, work on some things tactically and have a little bit of a mini preseason. Not everyone is already in, but there are a few guys in already that have begun to mesh and gel with the team. Jermaine's been in. Benji's obviously here. Diogo has been training a little bit as we're waiting for some paperwork. So it's been good to get those guys settled in.
So you mentioned Diogo, and it seems like he could, if he clicks, have a massive impact on this team. The number 10 attacking midfielder right in the middle of everything. Where should fans set their expectation for him?
I mean, wherever they want. But I think, I think we expect him to contribute quite a bit to the attack in terms of setting guys up, in terms of finishing plays. We needed another piece in the midfield that could add to our attack and just be more dangerous. And I think when we've got more guys that can hurt teams, then it becomes a lot more difficult to shut down any single one of them. You know, if they're worried about Chicho, then you've got Diogo, then you've got Diego, you've got Crooks, you've got whoever we end up playing on the right between Dominic and the other options. If they worry about Diogo, you got Chicho freeing up, you got Crooks finding space. So it's difficult for them to shut any one guy down when you've got so many weapons.
These guys have been playing this sport for a long time. Obviously, that's the way it works across all professional ranks. They've been literally playing it virtually their whole lives. I'm wondering, with that in mind, you bring up Chicho, you bring up Crooks and all this stuff. How long does it take to understand the tendencies and the mindset of guys that you're playing with to making sure you're all together? Pablo's talked about scanning the field and making sure that you're staying ahead of the game, so to speak. I'm just wondering, how long does that take before it can come together?
It really depends on the individual. And look, I think part of the job that Pablo and staff are doing, and they've done so well this year, is by really specifying and simplifying players' roles and being very clear with what they are so that players can accomplish their job. And as long as they have trust that everyone's going to accomplish, their job, they can do their own business and everything's going to turn out okay. And so by simplifying the roles and making it tailored to that player's skill sets within our system, it makes it a lot easier for them to settle in. And so, if we're being very clear with them, then they know what to do. If we were a little more free-flowing, maybe it would take a little bit longer because, like you said, it becomes more about tendencies and getting used to each other. But while there is always an element of that, I think you can get around some of it by being very clear and specific with them.
Obviously, attacking players get judged on goals and assists. There's no way to get around those numbers. But at the same time, Pablo has preached high pressure, never given teams a second to breathe. As soon as they win the ball, you're trying to win it back from them. Diogo, Dominic, Lachlan Brook, How good are these guys at pressing, and how quickly can the group be good? To PK's point about chemistry, you have to know when it's on, when it's not. When one guy goes, does everybody go with him? How good are these guys defensively and pressure from all the film you've watched and the games you've scouted?
Yeah, I think there were probably two things that were relatively high on our list. One is versatility. I think everyone we've signed adds an element of versatility, but the other one is what you just highlighted, which is the willingness to press. And if we couldn't see that in video of them playing, at their previous stops, then it wasn't really something that interests us. So finding guys like Diogo, like Lachlan, like Dominic, that we felt comfortable were, attacking players, but that we're going to add on the defensive side and give us that defensive work rate and pressing ability, we wouldn't have brought those guys in.
With this much time with no games, how do you guys manage to make sure the guys are not over practice, but still doing enough to maintain conditioning and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously we lean on sort of the sports science side quite a bit in terms of the rhythm and the microcycle, making sure that, you're not pushing them too hard. You got to push them hard enough that it pushes outside their comfort zone, but then let them come back into it so they can regroup. So we are working towards sort of, even though we're going a couple weeks without games, we're trying to be on a little bit of a game rhythm. We're going to play sort of a bigger 11-a-side tomorrow just to kind of put it on the same rhythm as a season with a Saturday sort of game. So we're just trying to do little things to keep them in rhythm, but obviously push them a little bit harder during the week because we don't have a game where we need to peak on the weekend. And so we can push them a little harder during this past week. And as we head into next week, we can taper off and make sure the guys are fresh and ready to perform on game day.
There's a lot of negatives to having this much time off. Is it good for the league? Is it good for the business? There are playing dates that could be really useful to clubs, and they've been knocked out of the tournament, and they can't use these Saturdays in the summer before the NFL starts and college football gets going. We can get into all of that. But just for this year, for this team, I did have people really close to the team who I think know a lot more soccer than me say the team is really tired. And just from a results perspective, the last 5 games, all competitions, 1 win, 3 losses, and then you had the 1-1 game in L.A. So the team wasn't really getting results and points at a very good clip, and people are saying it's tired. Is this break really a break for the club, given how things were going?
Yeah, I think they're always double-edged swords. Like you said, rest is a key factor there, but rhythm is another one, and consistency. And so you're kind of battling both those things because they're kind of pulling at opposite ends of the spectrum. But yeah, the team had been worked pretty hard. There was a couple injuries along the back line, and along with sort of not having quite as many depth pieces, which is obviously why we brought some guys in that could compete and push and impact the games off the bench. But not having as many of those in the last couple months has certainly, caused some guys to log a lot of minutes. And while that's good, again, from a consistency, form, and rhythm standpoint, eventually it does wear on you, and there's not just a physical fatigue, but there's a mental fatigue. And so I think this break can hopefully alleviate some of that with our guys, and we've now brought in, more competition, and hopefully that'll sharpen us all up as we, get into the rhythm for the stretch run.
Has Pablo's golf game gotten better during this time off?
Oof, probably. I mean, I don't know, because I'm a terrible evaluator of golf games, as I'm not an avid golfer.
Take the fifth on that one. Just pass.
Last person to ask. I am.
Are you sleeping better now? Because where you bring people in from Australia, I figure they're 7 hours. They're 7 hours behind tomorrow. It's super confusing. My wife has a college friend. I can never follow it. But it's like, careful! You're about to call them at 4 a.m. or they're about to call you at 2 a.m. or something. And then in Europe, were you literally negotiating around the clock here, given the fact you're bringing somebody in from Poland and Australia?
Australia was not quite so troublesome, spot on about the time difference, but you just gotta go to work later into the late afternoon and the evening, and then first thing in the morning, maybe you can do some stuff. But that wasn't as tough. The Poland, I was probably living the last few days on the Polish time zone, so that wasn't ideal for my sleep habits, but hopefully I can get back to a normal rhythm here too myself.
When we come back, we'll hear from the coordinators at Utah and BYU. The defensive coordinators, are coming up next. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. The Utes kick off the college football season in 10 days. We're almost down to single digits. 12 days to the first full Saturday of college football. We've got a little college football right now with the Ute and Cougar defensive coordinators. Let's start with Jay Hill.
You're feeling great about right now with the defense?
There's certain players that I think are playing at a super high level. They would be the ones you would expect. Batty. I think Blake Mangelson's got way better. John Nelson, the interior of the D-line I really like right now. Jacob Robinson's had a really good camp so far. I like the battle going on with the safeties right now. They're all getting better. I think we're much better in that room than last year, and we're deeper, so that's good.
What's concerning you?
Depth at certain spots. We need a couple backers to still step up. Depth there. There's some talent in that group, but we need someone to solidify. We need some guys to solidify themselves. And the corner group, I would say the same thing. We just need that third, fourth, fifth corner to really step up.
Is Mark Collins trending to where he could play in game?
Oh, yeah. So Mark Collins had a really good day today, and I like where Evan Johnson's been this camp. Jonathan Cabea stepped up, so we just need those guys to really solidify themselves as third, fourth, fifth corners in the Big 12.
What will be the determining factor in who's in the two deep at safety, since that is a deep?
Obviously playmaking, who's making the most plays tomorrow is going to be a big deal, and then also just the ones who know the defense the best.
Is tomorrow a 100-plus play scrimmage again like last week?
I think it will be a little bit shorter. We need an opportunity to be under the lights a little bit, get a feel for the stadium, all that, and more than anything, just one more opportunity for some of the guys to tackle.
You doing a night scrimmage?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
You talk about tackling, and we don't see everything that you guys do, but how is the team looking at that with what you've been able to evaluate?
Yeah, so I think we're way ahead of last year at this point. And last year, actually, I think we're a much improved tackling team from the years before. So I think we're better. Time will tell when we get into the second scrimmage tomorrow and then into games, obviously. But so far through camp, I think we're improved.
Do you have set metrics you try and look at as far as missed tackles, as far as limiting extra yardage after contact?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anything under 10, 10 missed tackles a game, anything under that is solid. I think you're really elite if you're getting six or less missed tackles in a game. If you're bleeding up into that 13, 14 or higher, then that's too many. It's excessive, and it's really poor if it's over 20 a game.
We were just talking to Caleb, and he was talking about going up against Batty every day and what that's like. It's like seeing those two battle and benefiting each other just as far as helping Batty get better.
Well, first off, I think Coach Woods has done an amazing job with the offensive line. I see their physicality. I like their techniques right now. Caleb's really improved. So to watch that battle with those guys it's fun for us. Each day we get to watch one-on-ones. We say it's kind of one of the great parts of the day, just kicking your feet up, drinking a Mountain Dew and watching one-on-ones, watching those guys battle. So that's one of our favorite parts of the day.
So Mountain Dew is the drink of choice then?
Oh, yeah. Nectar of the gods. I don't know if I can say that at BYU, but I think, well, oh, yeah, I better be careful. I really better be careful then, huh? Yeah, okay.
It's not about what the BYU offense has done from your perspective defending them.
Well, I really like what our offensive coaches do. They're always changing. They're multiple. They use a bunch of personnel groupings. I think we're way deeper in the wide receiver group, the tight end group, the running back group right now. So you just see such a mix and match of all the different varieties that they throw at you. They're doing a good job running the ball right now. The throw game can hurt you in so many different ways, shallow to deep. And the creativity of the offensive coaches I like. So there's a lot that I can't wait for the fans to see this year.
For the record, I agree with your Mountain Dew take. Want that on the
okay,
record,
yeah.
Jack Kelly looks really comfortable out there, just in his positioning, and he looks to be getting more and more so. Is that a matter of him being familiar with you and your coaching style from obviously two stops, or is he just kind of that fast of a learner, I guess?
Well, Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I wanted Jack Kelly here, right? He's a great player. He's instinctive. He runs. He's physical. And I can't wait to see him play in the Big 12. So I think the fans are going to like what they see from him. I like what I see. I think his comfort level in this defense shows up on the practice field because he's been doing this for a while now.
What's his story in terms of how you got him to Weber State and now he's become this P4 guy that's going to fit in?
Well, he was committed originally to Utah State, and I really thought he was a steal for them. And then just through the coaching changes and some of the stuff that occurred at Utah State, he kind of slipped through the cracks, and he was one I loved from his junior year. And so we were always kind of hovering, waiting. And when the opportunity arose, I mean, we pounced on that one. He was one I wanted from the get-go. And then right from day one when he stepped onto Weber State's campus, he was one of our strongest guys, one of the guys that showed the most promise, and he's played a lot of football now. So,
Jay, I've asked you this before, and I'll ask it again probably, but how's this team doing at knowing when to take chances defensively?
Not good enough yet. I still think we are trying to be so assignment sound right now that we're not necessarily learning when to cut loose. That comes from experience. It also comes from film study and also comfort in the defense. And that's where I think we can still take the biggest step forward, is just letting it rip, cutting loose, and just going to making plays.
Where do you feel like the defense can improve the most between now and game one?
That, what I just mentioned, cutting loose, attacking what they see. We can be more assignment sound. And then we're always working on pad level technique, toughness, just those things that will always be things that we're always stressing. We can continue to get better at that.
There's BYU defensive coordinator Jay Hill. Now here's the Utes defensive coordinator Morgan Scalley.
Morgan, you sent 2 safeties to the NFL, so that is an obvious priority to rebuild that position. How's it going?
Very well, very well. Guys that have had some experience, Teo at the nickel spot has progressed quite well. The physical aspect of it, him coming down in the box, that's something he's had to get used to, but he's put on the weight, looking really good. Nate Ritchie's a guy that's already started for us. John O'Hall had meaningful time last year for us. Rabbit Evans has made a ton of progress. And so feel really good with Alakai Gilman. That's a high IQ football player. We've got 5 guys vying for 2 spots, and I feel really good about where we're at. Not comfortable enough to say we've named 2 starters yet, but excited about those 5.
Are you okay rotating as many as 5 of them if you need to?
Preferably not. You'd like to get 2 to get into a rhythm, but we have had 3 safety groups in the past. That's where kind of Sione Vaki got his first playing time was his freshman year as that third safety. So, putting the right 11 on the field is the first priority, and if that right 11 is 3 safeties, then that'll be it.
What have you seen from Kenan Johnson? Obviously transferred in, but he seems like he's already making a big impact on the defense. I mean, walk me through what he's done this fall.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Kenan is he brings that experience and the accumulated reps at the corner position, great quickness, the ability to, the recovery speed's all, huge in our defense. We've got to keep him healthy. The ankle's been an issue for him here and there, but for the most part, he's looking, like he can be that guy opposite Zamaya.
How does a Florida high school kid who played at Georgia Tech end up at Utah for his final year? How did the recruiting there work?
Well, you'd have to ask Sharif on how that went. In terms of my meeting with him, he wanted a program that was going to be able to continue to develop him, but also an opportunity to play right away. We don't give out promises, so he knew that coming in that he was going to have to compete for that spot, and he's still working to compete for that spot. So love what he brings to the table, but I think our culture here, what we do defensively, as much man coverage as we play, a lot of that played into it, and then obviously his relationship with Coach Shaw.
You guys have a lot of depth in the linebacker room, maybe even the most in the conference. How are you guys sort of approaching that with so many different levels of playmakers? I mean, is it is there going to be solidified starters for each game, or is it going to be more of a rotational emphasis with, depending on who you're facing?
The best two will play in nickel, the best three will play in 4-3. And right now, Lander and Karene have the two spots solidified. Sione Fotu is in 4-3, been a very good player for us. So everyone knows that when you're part of a good football team, there's not everyone's going to start. So Colton Swanson did a nice job with that room, developing those guys, helping them understand that only 2 to 3 can play at one time.
In the Pac-12, you face some elite skill players, but Utah won a lot of games with being the more physical team and the tougher team and pulling games out. Now you go to the Big 12 where it's a little different, and especially this year it looks like there's multiple good running backs behind good offensive lines. Is it going to be a different test for the defense, a different style of ball as far as the toughness and physicality you'll face?
Don't know. I mean, our priority has always been to stop the run first, and if we can do that, then you force teams to throw a little bit more on you. There are some very good running backs in this league, some very good offensive lines, but we feel like we stack up well in that category, the physical component of what we do defensively. So there are different offenses that we face. Again, scouting these guys, each team that we play, they bring something different each week. And so just like the Pac-12, you've got to be able to be multiple in what you do, which you've seen us play 4-3, play nickel, play some dime, play some 3 safety packages, and we've got good enough players to be able to do it.
What have you seen from a guy like Isaac Wilson? Obviously, you're on the defensive side, but he's a freshman that's obviously made a big impact already on the defensive end. How hard has he been to defend, and what have you seen from him early on?
Well, what you see is what usually happens: early mistakes, but not a lack of confidence. His coaches trust and believe in him and work through those issues, and that was no different than Alex Smith when I played. He threw some early interceptions, and he learned from that. But good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of experience comes from bad judgment. So he had a really good scrimmage this last scrimmage, I can tell you that, playing with a lot of confidence, and he's improving quite a bit. Yeah.
Andy mentioned that they are essentially wrapping up the install, looking at some Southern Utah stuff in the next couple of days. Where along the process are you guys in that?
So we've been, a lot of the scout work that we do has been our first 3 opponents. There is, at least within our first 2 opponents, there's quite a bit of similarity in scheme. Utah State brings a little bit more of the spread component, but now, we're honing in on Southern Utah.
We asked you at the outset of training camp about your confidence in your defensive line. Has your opinion changed at all in the weeks since?
Has not changed. Very good at the D-tackle spot. Love the leadership that's coming from that room. And Keanu Tanavasa and Junior Tafuna. We've got vets in that room, so we should feel pretty good about it. I love the defensive end room. The opportunity there to be able to rush for and not necessarily have to bring pressure. We bring pressure depending on what we see from an offense, but it's nice to know that we can get home with 4.
Is there any new guys in that side defensive end that you feel like is kind of helping you guys right now?
Oh, man. You don't want to leave anyone out, but again, Van being healthy, Connor being healthy, Logan is almost 100%. Kipakana brings something, perhaps a third down package for you. Paul Fitzgerald, it looks really good. Cash Dillon is a freshman. My goodness, he's going to be special. And then you got John Henry Daly, and you got good night. I'm going to forget someone, and someone's going to have their feelings hurt. But it's a good room. It's a good room.
That linebacker room. Karene, Leonard, we know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like you've seen development in the 2s and 3s behind them?
No question. Yeah, Sione Fotu and Trey Reynolds that you have there, and some younger guys. Obviously, Hunter Andrews left, but you got Kenai Lopes and Josh Calvert is as smart as they come. He can play all 3 positions, so definitely feel comfortable with that group.
Teo Johnson's a guy kind of almost had a similar path that you did, played on the offensive end of the ball, switches to become a defensive back. How is he learning that development curve of being a safety, and what have you been able to help him with throughout this transition?
Well, Yeah, the development is, first of all, knowing your alignment assignment technique as a safety. Then it becomes understanding where you fit in the grand scheme of things, and ultimately how an offense is trying to manipulate you. There's a lot to learn there outside of just, he was a quarterback versus I was more of a running back. Right. So just the physicality of things, and he's put on weight, and we've thrown him down in the box on purpose. We want to, make sure that he's getting that, the hitting and the taking on blocks and all that stuff, and he's done well.
Where's your leadership coming from this fall?
Right now, again, I would say the D tackles, Kantanavasa, Junior Tafuna, but Karene Reed's as good of a leader as we've had. Love what he brings to the table. Nate Ritchie at the safety position. DN's Connor O'Toole and Van. So, really good group of guys, good leaders in each room was what you're looking for, and we've got it.
A lot of players have talked about the culture, the defensive culture here standing out as a reason why they came here or why they enjoy it here. What makes the defensive culture here so special?
Man, do you got a few hours?
Yeah.
No, it's something that we harp on every day. Culture is what you believe, how you behave, and it's the experience that's delivered by that behavior. The experience that they get is awesome, and I think that's why they keep coming back. They're held accountable, but they also know we love them. And yeah, so much goes into that in terms of not only teaching them how to become a better football player, but a better person, and anyway. We'll leave it at that. Series. It's a long one.
Logan Fano is obviously coming back from his third ACL tear, and he came back pretty quickly from this one. What, I guess, surprised you about his recovery in this room and so forth?
It's an individual deal. I had no idea when he'd be available, but he's available, and he's worked his butt off. And usually guys that want to be back, get back sooner, as opposed to milking it or he is a guy that we've been careful with how we've used him in the process of coming back, but he doesn't look like he's missing anything.
DJ and PK is proudly presented by our title sponsor, Black Desert Resort, Utah's premier golf resort. When we come back, David Locke coming up next. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. We are joined now by David Locke. His weekly appearance is brought to you by the Murdoch Auto Team. David, good morning.
Good morning, guys. I will be honest, I'd rather be in Maui not talking to you than in Salt Lake Park City talking to you, but I do love talking to you.
That's weird because on my phone just came up, how photos will come up? It just came up, the Maui trip that we took in January. I'm literally looking at it right now, and you brought it up, Maui.
There you go.
That's
so
weird.
I'll be really honest. I miss you guys not enough to wake up at 4:00 in the morning in Maui to see you or to talk to you. If I'm being honest.
I miss you enough to where I would travel to Maui to stay with you.
That is so heartwarming. Do you like me enough to... Never mind, we won't find out how far you go.
To visit you in Maui? Yes.
Yeah, and if it's my place and I'm paying for it, you're really willing to come, right?
Then I'm madly in love.
Okay, good. Just wanted to check. Just wanted to make sure I understood the parameters which we're speaking of here.
That's what friends are for.
He gets pictures of Maui. What popped up on my computer right as you started talking, the NFL kept its most advanced data hidden for years. Now it's finally on sale. The NFL, always one more way to make a buck. Would you pay for NFL analytics? Do you love analytics that much?
Well, I pay for NBA analytics, so I don't see why I wouldn't pay for NFL analytics.
Work is the easy answer to that. The NBA stuff helps you work.
Yeah, I would probably pay for a lot of the NBA analytics anyway.
Okay.
What are they putting out there?
I don't know. It's a Wall Street Journal story. I haven't read it yet.
Oh,
it just popped up.
Wow, look at you subscribing to the Wall Street Journal.
No, it's on Twitter. I'm not subscribing to the Wall Street Journal. If I did, I would know it, but I don't. Just popped up. It's essentially an ad. All right, the Utah Jazz made a bunch of moves since you were, or while you were out sunning yourself and golfing and going to the beach in Maui. Do you expect more moves before the season starts?
No.
This is it. This is the team.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the NBA is dormant right now. It's kind of like sacrilegious to make a move right now. This is the one time everybody, I think, takes vacation, gets time off, and all of that. So I can't imagine. I mean, obviously something could happen in training camp, but most teams that are pretty optimistic of where they are. I can't think of a team right now that's in desperate need of something that we have. Now something could change and someone gets hurt or something happens, and then suddenly somebody that's on our roster right now doesn't look appealing to anyone else, and then I guess so that's someone calling us. And then I guess the other answer is, what's ever going to happen with Brandon Ingram? I don't see that play making sense for us right now. So, at this point, I think the 2024-25 season is going to be largely about finding out what we have in 6 different players. And that's going to be the delicate dance for Will Hardy of, no free minutes and playing with a purpose. At the same time, with 3 first-round draft picks coming in the upcoming draft, we really need to have a pretty clear idea as best you can on the rookies. But on 7 players, really, I guess, Keontae, Taylor, Bryce, and Walker, along with the 3 rookies.
Yeah, I totally agree. How about the philosophy then? And, we understand you've spoken about it. We've referenced it many times of the no free minutes, but maybe allowing them to play through more mistakes.
Yeah, I think you earn that, though, right? So if you've shown, like last year, if we take Taylor, for example, Taylor in camp compared to Kelly and John Collins, it wasn't close, right? And so that's really free minutes. If he had if Will had just announced Taylor Hendricks is our 9th pick and he's going to start and play 26 minutes a night no matter what, that's really free minutes. I would hope that we come to camp this year, Taylor with the experience he gained last year, little growth, the body looked way better. Our strength and conditioning staff, I thought, did an incredible job. I thought he looked really different in Summer League. And he comes out, and it's clear that, he's probably the best power forward we have, or, depending how you're going to play him as a 4-3 with Lowry, and he's earned that. Then I think you start to give him some leeway. But you can't just get the minutes and then get the leeway also. Like, Keontae's probably at this point earned the leeway, right? Like, he's going to be our starting point guard or one of our starting guards. And he's 2 for 11, putting out the effort, but not shooting it well. You leave him out there.
Right. I buy that. And the others haven't yet, but they've got to do it.
What you can't do, though, and the key to that was he's putting out the effort. Like, I don't care who these young guys are. When they come out in game 34 and we're in New Orleans after 3 days off in New Orleans, woo! And, you're running around like dead man walking, like, you got to pull that. Because the minute that gets acceptable, you've got a tough road to get over that. Once you start allowing that, you're in trouble. And I think the biggest lesson recently from any team is what happened with Houston. And what happened with Houston was that they had all these young players. They were awful. Under maybe Steven Silas is a great guy, but there's a feeling he lacks in direction as a head coach. And Jalen Green was abundantly available at the trade deadline this year. And then all of a sudden, he goes nuts in the second half of the season, where he's now played under Ime Udoka, played under structure, played with Dylan Brooks, played with Fred VanVleet, played with veteran players. The offense starts to run around Alfred Sengun, and then Sengun gets hurt, and Jalen Green goes nuts. And you're like, oh, that's why we drafted him number 2. But they were within, a taker of trading him at the deadline, because in the 2.5 years of non-structured, no expectation, no standard basketball, he looked awful, and they were about to quit on him because they didn't want to extend him at the end of this year. Boy, that could have been a really catastrophic error. And you just got to make sure that your guys are in a structure where you can actually evaluate them. And I think that's why re-signing Lowry is so important, because I would like to forget every minute I saw from Keontae George last year without Jordan Clarkson and Lowry Markkanen on the floor, because I generally think they were unfair. Like, here's a guy who's probably the 175th or 200th best player in the NBA last year, and you're asking him to be the best player on the floor? Well, he looked like crap doing it, not studying. And so I'd like to erase that from my memory, along with every high school song lyric and phone number that I still have, and get that off my hard drive so that it doesn't impact my thought process when I think of Keontae, because I just think those were unfair minutes. But if we had traded Lowry, that's a structure by which a player has any chance to show if he's getting any better.
Are all of these young guys going to be with the Jazz, or are some of them ticketed to the G League, or do we get to watch them all develop, for better or worse?
I think the roster is set in a manner that it's available for all of them to be with the Jazz if they play well and have decent camps. And then I feel like there's a player that's sitting behind each one of them that is not dramatically different or brings a little something that would allow, hey, you know what, why don't you go play 30 minutes a night instead of 12 in the G League this week? Patty Mills is going to play backup point guard. Why don't you go, Kyle Filipowski, why don't you go play, Drew Eubanks is going to play. Like, they're viable, solid NBA players who know how to play. Eubanks was really quite good in some stuff in Phoenix last year to dig into the second-tier numbers. And so I think you have the ability, like, Isaiah Collier, if he has a good camp, comes out ready, yeah, it'd be nice to see him for 15, 20 minutes a night as your backup point guard. On the other end, if there's a moment where he feels like he's getting overwhelmed, or there's some value to having him actually play 30 and have him actually kind of lead a team, or maybe shoot a little bit more or work on his shot a little bit more, I think you have a roster that allows you the flexibility to do that. And the same thing with Bryce and Cody. Mykhailiuk, totally viable NBA player. You can play him, and you could get Cody and Bryce down to the G League to get time if you want it.
What do you think the philosophy is behind the Mills signing?
I think Will Hardy loves him from his time in San Antonio. And so I think in a year in which there will likely be more L's than W's, it's really valuable to have guys on the roster that will hold things together and set a model and do things the right way. Like, it's really a problem if your 13th, 14th, and 15th guys are leading people astray. And so I think, the Eubanks, Mykhailiuk, Mills signings are all guys that have impeccable reputations of how they conduct themselves as professionals and how they do things. And in the case of, I think, both Eubanks and Mills, people in our organization have seen them work day to day. So I think that's the concept behind it. And then also they're viable so that if, in fact, an injury or someone wears out or someone needs a break, you can play them.
15 back-to-backs, 7 and 8 game homestands and road trips. Aside from your personal comfort, does that matter for the team at all as they go through rebuild mode, or the schedule is really less important than ever, especially because you don't even know what looks like a hard game on paper? The other team may sit 2 guys, and it changes everything anyway.
Yeah, no, I think, obviously I want as many road games as possible prior to Christmas is always my rule. Keep me in Utah from Christmas to April 15th as much as possible, please. only just a little addiction problem I have that I need to, deal with. But so the schedule is good now. I think we played like 18 of our 41 road games before Christmas. So I'm very pleased. I think, there's a stretch in December that looks like it could be really brutal, but actually we don't know because the NBA Cup games. But if you can kind of see where the hockey team is, and the hockey team is, I think, home for the front half of that little stretch. So I would assume that we're playing another road game, then home for one, and then back out for 5. Like, I think if you now look at December and assume that it's a home game on the first spot for the NBA Cup and then a road game for the second, I think, don't we do something kind of crazy like play 14 or 15 games in different cities like that? Something of that sort?
Yeah, something of that sort. There could be a lot of time on the road.
So, I think that's just that'll probably be the make or break part of the season. It could probably start. I haven't looked at who our opponents are in that sense. Could probably start okay, surprise some people, win some games, and then that stretch when the margins are tight and then you start to get worn down is probably where things could make or break.
How much do you think that the Jazz are communicating with Markkanen about the plans or potential plans? He's a great player. He's signed on, but obviously he's looking at least one, if not 2 more seasons of heavy losing before they can start to get better. And I'm just wondering if he accepts it based on the knowledge that they've given him. What do you think of that theory?
Communicated with him well. That communication is a little difficult, right? You can't really tell them we're never going to trade you because that's not true. So, I don't know exactly what we believe in you. Here's $200 million. Okay, well, that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
We want you here. That's true until someone offers us something that's better for our franchise, and then we're going to trade you. That's just that's not Lowry. That's just the truth in the league. It's really the truth for everybody, including Luka Doncic, except for the fact that there's no package that's available to Dallas ever that would be better than Luka Doncic, so he kind of knows he'll never be traded. And seemingly the same thing with Giannis in Milwaukee, but again, you never know. They have a bad year this year, then they're against they're going to trade Giannis, right? So I think you're communicating with him, but it's like you don't want to be on the hook for just lying to someone. I always think the one that I am skeptical of is when the player says, "Oh, the team said they'd send me to the best situation for me." I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's really true. I don't think any team's ever actually said that. That might be what you heard, but I'm pretty certain that's not what they think they said. So I always hear that at trade deadline, like, "Oh, so-and-so's a liar. They said they'd send you to the Duda, and I went to, Minnesota. And why they said I'd go to a good place." Like, oh, well, maybe they deemed Minnesota a good place. So I always think that's a little questionable when I hear that from someone because I just am not entirely sure I think that's true. So I think you have to be really careful. But I mean, Lowry in his Holly Rowe interview on the Lofo or Front Row podcast and in some of his other quotes, he seems like he's got it. Like, okay, I'm going to be the man. We're going to have a hard time winning games. We're going to try to win as soon as we can. And I really like Utah, so let's see what we got.
Do you think he'd really like Utah if he went on a trip with you to Maui? Or do you think that he'd start changing his ranking of the states here in the old US of A?
Well, I'm not sure what you're really asking there. Lowry would have a perfectly good time if he came on a trip with our family to Maui. And his kids would too, because his kids are super cute. My kids would play with him all the time, so he'd get all his time off and we'd just play with his kids. So he'd be great.
More likely to go on a Maui trip with you, me, PK, or Lowry?
Unquestionably PK.
There it is, PK.
He might get in my suitcase.
Well, I don't know what to say.
You've rendered PK speechless. Good work, David.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. What can I have a quick? I need a quick. It's August. I need my quick Cliff Note summary. Utah, top of the Big 12. BYU, near the bottom. Give me the why on each.
Utah's done a lot of winning the last 5 years, and there is not a team with the pedigree and the consistency and the roster that they have, so they get the top spot. Oklahoma State and Kansas State get a lot of respect, so it's not going to be easy or a slam dunk, but they are definitely the favorite going in. For BYU, they were 2-7 in the league, and they still haven't named a starting quarterback, and that alone, those two things alone, will put you in the bottom third of the league.
Which of those two do you think is most likely to be wrong?
I think there's a better chance that BYU moves to the middle than Utah moves to the middle, if that's what you're getting at. I mean, if Cam gets hurt, Oklahoma State and Kansas State can win that league in a heartbeat. There's not that big a gap.
And then Big 12 question. Are Oklahoma State and Kansas State actually any good?
Yeah.
I mean, like how good? Like, are they top? What are they really? Like, if they're in the SEC, are they finishing fourth or are they finishing ninth?
Yeah, that's really hard to measure now because these leagues, it looks like they're really not going to play each other very much. So there's very little data. They're all in their own bubbles.
If they're in the Big 10, are they finishing fourth or are they finishing ninth?
Fourth. I don't think the middle. I don't know that the middle of the Big 10's that good. And I'm not sure I buy that. The top's very good, as I think the playoffs have shown.
So you figure in the SEC, Kansas State and Oklahoma State might be ninth. In the Big 10, they might be fourth.
I don't know about ninth. That seems a long way.
Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama.
I don't know that Oklahoma's great, but okay. Texas has already lost their top two running backs.
Okay.
I think LSU's got to reload a bit, so they might be down a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of big brands there, but I don't know that they're all going to be great at the same time.
Okay. And one of those Mississippis is all fired up. Our SEC people are all fired up.
Yep.
I was listening to our SEC preview the other night, so it's fine.
When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.